Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our fifth week of consumer market research. This week is going to be a turning point. We've been talking mostly about qualitative research and that touchy-feely realm of how do you feel and why do you do this. Now we're going to move to the realm of measurement and data analysis and start a little bit with statistics. This week we're going to talk mostly about sampling and answer the question, how many people do you talk to? How large should your sample be when you're doing a quantitative survey? Okay, now this can be pretty complicated stuff. In my opinion, it's not the most interesting part of market research, but it's very important. And it becomes important when in a few weeks, when we talk about analyzing data, because you're going to be confronted with questions when you're doing quantitative market research regarding significance. Let's say that I ask the question, is Honda a reliable car? And let's say that 50% of 18 to 24-year-olds agree with that, and 65% of 25 to 35-year-olds agree with that. Is that difference significant, or is it just due to chance? And this is all going to be a function of your sample size. Now, keep in mind what a sample is. A sample is a small group of people, ideally achieved through some kind of random selection. And you're not talking to a percentage of a population, and you're not talking to certainly everybody in the population, like a census, for example. You know, the U.S. government goes out and tries to survey every single household in the United States. That's a census. We're dealing with a realm of probability. We're dealing with a statistical sample, a subset of a population of folks. Okay, now there are some key concepts that I think it's important for you to understand. The first is that we are dealing with confidence levels. Now, ideally, the book mentions this. In market research, the norm is to select a confidence level of 95%. Some people will go with the 99% level, especially if precision is very important. And some people might even go with a 90% confidence level if they're looking to get more directional kinds of results. But let's assume for our purposes that 95% confidence level is what we want to achieve. So what are we 95% confident of? Well, we're 95% confident that our responses are going to fall within a given range. Let's go back to our Honda example. Is Honda a reliable car? Let's say that 85% of people agree with that statement. Okay, I want to be 95% confident that that number, it's not going to be exactly 85, but it's going to be plus or minus a certain number of points. This is called my margin of error, or sampling error. It's got different names. And that is a function of my sample size. In other words, the more people that I talk to, the smaller that range of error is going to be. Now, you can get this, you can measure this using the table in the book. And I've also provided you a link in week 5 on Blackboard. Let's talk about the way that sample size calculator is set up. You'll notice that the default is 95% confidence level. We'll talk about the percentage in a minute, which defaults to 50%. And then I put in a sample size. Let's say I put in 100. In other words, I'm going to talk to, my sample is going to be 100 people. I'm confident that my answer is about 10 percentage points plus or minus within a given number. So 85% of people agree that Honda is a reliable car. I am 95% confident that the true number is within 10 percentage points of that. In other words, the true number is somewhere between 75% and 95% of people. Now, if I have a larger sample size, that margin of error shrinks. I'm much more certain that 85% is the true number of people that feel that way. If I talk to 2,000 people, that number shrinks to just a couple percentage points. So I'm getting much more exact with a larger sample. Now let's talk about that percentage, because I think that's a little bit confusing. In the program, in the calculator, where I've given you the link, it defaults to 50%. 50% is the worst case scenario. So what are we talking about here, worst case scenario? I think the book explains this concept pretty well. If I ask people, do you drink liquid? Do you consume liquid on a given day? Pretty close to 100% of people are going to say yes to that question. So I can be pretty confident that almost everybody consumes some sort of liquid. I can be pretty confident that the next person I speak to, and the next person after that, and the next person after that, is going to respond in the affirmative. They're going to say yes to that question. If I ask the question, do you drink Dr. Pepper on a given day? And let's say that 40% of the people say yes, which means 60% of the people say no. When I talk to the next person, I'm not going to have that same level of certainty about whether or not they drink Dr. Pepper. So when I'm choosing a sample size, I want to assume the worst case scenario, which is 50%, which means I don't know what the next person's going to say. They might say yes, and they might say no. So all in all, these are the things that you need to consider when you're looking at a sample size. How large should the sample be? The larger the sample, the more accurate you are. Confidence level, 95% generally. Percentage, assume worst case scenario, which is 50%. This is all going to come into play when in a few weeks when we start talking about analyzing data, because I'm going to want to know if a given difference between two groups of numbers is statistically significant. Now, let's say we're testing two commercials, and I want to know which commercial is better. And I've got commercial A, and let's say 75% of people like commercial A. And let's say that 60% of people like commercial B. Well, is A better than B? Well, that's going to be a function of my sample size. And if I've got a very large sample, I'm able to be much more specific and much more able to say, yeah, these two numbers are different. A seems to be much better, much more preferred than B. If I only talk to a small number of people, let's say I talk to 50 people, now I'm talking about a margin of error that's close to, let me say, 14 points. So those numbers might overlap, so I cannot confidently state that that difference is due to chance. Now, I often get asked by clients, how many people should I interview? And a lot of the time my answer is, well, how accurate do you need to be? If you're just looking to find out, do people like commercial A, I might get away with a smaller sample size because I want to know directionally if they like it or not. If I'm measuring something very specific, like I want to know if the people that know my brand has increased in the last 6 months, and I want to get pretty precise on that, I'm going to want to talk to a larger sample. Now, another thing to consider when you're looking at sample sizes is that you're going to want to sub-analyze your data. You're going to want to analyze your data by different groups. So let's say that I'm going to talk to 1,000 people. And once I get my results, I want to analyze number of people that like a commercial, let's say, by age group. And maybe I have 4 age groups. Let's say I've got a group that's 18 to 24, and I've got a group that's 25 years old to 35 years old, and 36 years old to 46 years old, etc., right? So I've got 4 groups.